2023 Independence Charter Review Commission meeting. Lindsay, would you take the roll, please?
Sure. Summer?
Here.
McDonald?
Here.
Casey?
Here.
Huff?
Here.
Latham?
Here.
Allender?
Here.
Gahart?
Here.
Frakes?
Here.
Waters?
Here.
Steele? Here. Boatright?
Here.
Thank you. I'm attending virtually today because I tested positive for COVID, so I didn't want to spread that around. Second item on our agenda is approval of the February 7, 2023 minutes. Do I have, is there any discussion on that before I ask for a motion?
Motion to approve is.
Okay, a motion to approve minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Under announcements, we received several communications before this meeting tonight. There were 2 memos from Mr. Walker and an email that I received from Mark Randall that I forwarded and was sent out to you, and an email from Lucy Young that was sent out to the members. Does anyone, did everyone have a chance to see those and review them?
Yes.
Okay. Take that as a yes. Does anyone else have any announcements before we move on and get started with the charter?
Which memo was from Mark? I got Zach's.
It was from Mark Randall.
Mark Randall. Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I thought she said.
Did you get that copy, Mr. Waters?
What is it concerned?
He was writing
Yeah.
about
The electric utility.
utilities, language.
Okay.
You received it.
I think these came yesterday, is that correct, Madam Chairman?
The email from Lindsay?
And the city manager came yesterday, so I would just admit that I did the best I could.
Okay, it was a lot to read.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so moving forward to start back in the charter review, there are some sections that I'd like to go back to that we looked at our last meeting. The first one is section 2.1, Article 2. This is the council created number of council members' terms. And there was some discussion at our last meeting about whether there should be the ability to enlarge the number of council members or how that would happen. And Mr. Walker addressed it in his memos. And I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I also looked at it and I was thinking we may want to add something to this section setting out how the district boundaries are created and how often they are reviewed, because I don't find that in the charter. And I believe it's done every 10 years when the census comes out.
Well, wouldn't that be the time to do it when the census comes out?
Yeah, there's no language in the charter, and I didn't know if anyone was interested in adding that. I found some kind of pretty well-written language in the Blue Springs charter If you want me to read it, I will.
I'm kind of butting in, but I read Zach Walker's memo of February 17th, and I read that to mean that Independence has an ordinance setting out the district boundaries and also the ability to, I guess, change those boundaries if it's necessary by population. Is that not true?
Well, if it's covered in the ordinance, then I apologize. I wasn't able to read all of that.
Well, I haven't either, so I'm just curious. So I read the memo and it seems it's telling me that that's all been done by ordinance already.
If it's in my ordinance and I don't see any reason to go ahead and add it.
Oh, Jackie, I don't either. I just read it and I was curious.
I can confirm for you that the charter calls for the number of council members, so that there will be a mayor, 2 at-large, and 4 district council members. The Code of Ordinances states that every 10 years following the census, that city staff will review the population shifts across the community and try to balance those as best they can so that there's an equal number of people represented by those 4 districts. And then that map is submitted to city council for their vote once the city staff recommendation's been provided.
So I think I have a question of boundaries. Is that okay? So I think that if we have boundaries, city districts, we all districts right now are not populated the same.
They're pretty close. We just adopted a map late last year, and there's about 27,000 per district.
Because my question would be, wouldn't it be if we annexed something, would be more of a reasoning, because people will move to new developments, business areas, schools, for instance. So I didn't know whether the balance would be population or the area.
It's population. So the city code states that it will be based on population.
Okay.
So right now, if you look at a map, the 2nd district, which is the northwest quadrant of the city, geographically is much larger than any of the others. But, you've got a lot of homes that are on, 2 and 3 acre lots out there. So you have fewer people. So the geographically it's larger to create that balance.
Is there any other discussion on this section? If not, we'll move on. There was a recommendation or discussion of combining sections 1.2 through 1.5, and I looked at it and sent a draft out, and did anyone have a chance to look at that?
I can pull it up.
Chairwoman, I did. I totally agree with it. Ours is so wordy that I don't think it's useful at all. And it's clear and concise as you put it in there. I think we need to move on and vote on that.
Okay. So my recommendation was, Lindsay, can you pull it up?
I have.
The document that I
They can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yes, there it is. So there would be, a strike through in the title of 1.2 to make it so that it would read form of government, and I think we need the word or a semicolon or something in there, and then powers. And then no, I don't believe there's any other change to 1.2. And then I recommend striking through and deleting 1.3 and 1.4 because they're repetitive. And then 1.5 would be changed to 1.3, and that's construction.
Do we need to make a motion to pass this, or?
Yeah.
I'll make a
Do
motion.
we need a motion? Is there any? Okay.
And
A
I'll
motion,
second.
do you have a second? Any discussion?
Yeah, Jackie, what's the purpose of adding that the 1.53, well, the construction paragraph, it seems like it's redundant also. Is it?
Well, it does say the powers of the city shall be liberally construed. That was recommended in the model charter.
Okay.
The second sentence, I just left the second sentence in there. If anyone thinks it should be deleted, you can look at that.
That fits. Yeah. It doesn't talk yourself right back out of it, so. that fits. That last sentence fits.
Some wiggle room.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of that change, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right. Passes. And then something that Mr. Walker brought up was section 2.2. I'm sorry, I'm bouncing back and forth here. And it has to do with the language about primaries, which we will discuss primaries later in the charter. And Mr. Walker's suggestion was if we decide to remove primary elections from the charter, then we would come back to 2.2 and change that language. So I'm just going to recommend that we wait until we discussed and voted on primaries. And then we can come back to 2.2. Any discussion on that? Okay, next is 2.5. So there's two things to discuss in 2.5. The first was I had asked that you let me present you with some veto language. 2.5 it says the mayor shall have no power of veto. I did some research on it. Mr. Walker did some research, and there are certain cities that their mayors don't have any veto power, and then some that do. I provided some language. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that. But does anyone want to discuss pros or cons of giving the mayor veto power?
I do.
Well, in my opinion,
Yes, do.
the mayor should not have veto power. I don't see the point. We have a city council manager form of government. And for if the mayor was in the minority regarding a decision, then it would be at least 4-3. So if I read the proposition, it would take 2/3 of the city council to overturn a veto, and that would then be 4 votes. So I don't really see the point. The other thing is, I think it kind of affects the balance of things. With the mayor having a vote and each city council person having a vote, and I think there's a good balance. And I think if you gave the mayor more power, it could the balance of how the city government works.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments on that?
The only comment I would have is I totally agree with his comment.
Okay.
I probably would have put it better, but we'll just go with this.
I've got a question, I guess. On the cities you looked at that did have veto for the mayor, were there any limitations or requirements on those?
As far as what the mayor could veto?
Yes.
No, at least Summit charter didn't specifically allow for or speak to a veto, except in one section that I found in their development code, gave the mayor the power to veto. And I also saw a note that looked like a note online that they were going to look at that to clarify it the next time they had a charter review. But other than that, I didn't find any that were specific.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairperson,
Yes.
Zach did a great job with breaking down the veto power issue in Blue Springs Lee Summit, and also in the Model City Charter. In the Model City Charter, it does not recommend the veto power.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay, well, I won't go any further with that unless there's some support from other members. All right, let's move on. Mr. Walker made a recommendation also on 2.5 having to do with the emergency power of the mayor. I have so many papers laying around, let's see. And I think it's a good recommendation, and that is because there's been some changes in the Missouri law that have come about recently. And so in Mr. Walker's memo, follow-up information from 2/7/23 meeting, on page 3, he's suggesting that we add in accordance with the revised statutes of the state of Missouri. In the second paragraph, after the word city.
Doesn't he also lay out the 30 days within 80 days?
If it's okay to speak to that, yeah. So the state statute that was adopted has these different milestones. The language I did include recommended was in accordance with the revised statute of Missouri, only because, this session, the General Assembly could come in and say, we don't want the chief executive in the city to have any authority to do a state of emergency in a public health crisis. So I thought as long as you were tying it back to state statute, it would limit the mayor's authority to have a unending, indefinite time period of what that might look like.
Yeah, I agree with that. Is there any other discussion about tying it to the Missouri statutes? Okay, do I have a motion to make that addition to that section?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Walker, for that. Next is 2.6, the mayor pro tempore. Mr. Walker, so we made an edit to that. Is that correct, Lindsay?
I'm sorry, making edits from last, what were you asking?
2.6.
Yes, there was an edit to that.
Yes.
And Mr. Walker recommended that we specify when the election would occur for the mayor pro tempore. my recommendation, and this language is, I don't know, someone could probably word this better, but I would recommend that we add that the election is held annually at the first meeting after the regular municipal election date in April. I guess I have a question for either Mr. Walker or Mr. Langford. Should it say the first regular meeting or just the first meeting?
So the council rules of procedure and the code of ordinances refer to their what we all think of as the council meeting as a regular meeting. So having that language in here would tie to that and create that continuity and eliminate any confusion. I would recommend you specify with regular meeting.
Okay, so I know that I didn't write this out and send it to you, but Lindsay, did you type it?
I haven't typed anything yet. You said 2.6, the council shall.
Yeah, 2.6. And I think maybe it needs to be a second sentence after the underline, yeah.
Okay.
So this is not final. This is just something I would like for you to type. The election for Mayor Pro Tempore shall be held annually, comma, at the first regular meeting after the regular municipal election in April. So again, I'd ask Mr. Walker or Mr. Langford's opinion on whether the regular municipal election in April is descriptive enough.
Do we need to add like first regular city council meeting so they know for sure what meeting?
Jackie, I think that's fine. I'm just looking at the language of how it reads. It's clear. I think it's
I
fine.
guess my concern is that is it confusing because we don't always have something in an election in April, but there is a regular municipal election date in April.
There is, yes.
So should we add the word date?
I kind of have
Where would you add it?
a similar question. Are we electing a mayor pro tem annually?
Yeah.
We do that annually.
Isn't that is it elected annually now?
Yeah, right now it's occurring after those council elections every 2 years. So for example, the elections that were just held this past April of 22, they swear in the new group, the clerk calls the roll to signal that the new council has been seated, and then the first order of business is election of a mayor pro tem.
So is it annually or every 2 years?
Every 2 years following election, whether it's the citywide or the district elections, it's happening at that meeting after the municipal election. The only difference, Jackie, from what you've got right here is just that it's happening every 2 years following those council elections.
Okay.
Jackie, I was just curious. I read the provisions of 2.6, and I didn't really see anything wrong with that, understanding that it'd be every 2 years. Was there a reason to have it every year?
No.
So with the provisions that exist there in 2.6 regarding the election, that would work.
Yeah, I think annually could come out, couldn't it?
We can take,
First reading of the motion after the election.
okay, does that make sense?
I don't, what is it? Is there a question?
I just want to make sure that the making that change is, everyone agrees that should be in there. If it makes sense when you read it. Does that set out that it's every 2 years?
Well, the way I read I read 2.6, that is the first meeting after the time provided for the beginning of the terms. And Mr. Walker said that happens every 2 years when you have a new council, or new council member. So I assume that would happen every 2 years. Am I correct, Mr. Walker?
You are correct. I may, if it's okay, I may ask.
I would vote, or I'm proposing that we just keep the language that exists in 2.6 regarding the time for election.
Do you mean don't strike the rest of paragraph 1?
I'm sorry?
Are you saying you don't think we should strike the rest of that first paragraph?
I don't have a problem with the language. I guess I'm counting lines, the first 4 or 5 lines, but then we talk about it was brought up by Mr. Walker in his memo that we should have a language to clarify when the election occurs. And to me, the language that presently exists regarding the time for election works. Anyway, that's the way I'd see it.
If I can intervene,
Yes.
Mr. Walker and I were looking at some language, and there is a state municipal election day that is, what was it, April 4th every year? I think
The first Tuesday in April.
first Tuesday in April every year. It seems like if you want to do this annually, it would be prudent to link the language of this to that statutory day, the municipal election day in April.
That's what I was trying to do. It's actually they've changed that language in the statute. It's the first Tuesday after the first Monday in April.
Is it still called, what's it called, the state municipal?
General.
I know.
General Municipal Election Day.
Okay.
Right. So that's kind of what I was trying to do because they could change it again, the language of that again. So that's why I had the regular municipal election date in April.
Is it general?
General municipal election day. would you need the prepositional phrase in April then? Considering they could change that? Because then it would just follow the general municipal election day. Say they move it to September. I don't know.
I don't know if is that the legal language for that April date? Because we put things on the ballot in August and November too.
So Jackie, I'm not looking at the statutes, I confess. I'm looking at the Secretary of State's website. And just so everybody's hearing what I'm reading, it says February is for bond elections only, that March is for charter cities and charter counties to put issues on the ballot if they so choose. April is the general municipal election day. August is available for all public elections, and November is available for all public elections.
Okay, so we could use general municipal election day, right? But biannually, has there been any discussion of changing it to annually from every 2 years at the city?
Jackie, I haven't been privileged to any of those conversations. I mean, I've not heard that. I don't know if any elected officials have ever floated that, but right now they're just following the script, if you will, and electing that mayor pro tem following each of the elections.
Potentially, could a special election also fall on a in-between year in April?
It absolutely could. I believe the script that they're following, which is this, they're treating that as a council for that 2-year period. And then when there is an election, that's what is triggering a change, or at least a consideration of a change in the mayor pro tem. If one of the district council seats were to come open and there was a special election, that is still viewed as that council, that body, until we hit that 2-year mark when the full group is up for re-election.
That's the way I would understand it, is you'd be putting too much into it if there was a vacancy out of sequence.
Well, do we want to just go back and,
I
like Mr. Allender suggested, and use the language that was in there before?
like this. I like the one paragraph we have now that we've just updated. That says it all.
I do too.
I agree.
It says it all in a paragraph. So as the city manager just said, if there was a special election, it's considered the same body, and that certainly reduces, which I'm not, but that certainly covers it all in one paragraph.
Okay.
I'd make a motion to set the new language that's there now, and pass that.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it passes. Thank you. see. Is there, Lindsay, is there anything else that we need to go back to? If not, our next section is 2.8, correct?
Correct.
Right. 2.8. I believe there was a question at our last meeting, or a request that Mr. Walker, the staff, give us information on how other cities handle vacancies. So, does anyone want, Mr. Walker provided some information to us. Does anyone want to discuss that? If we need to make any changes?
I'd like to discuss it so that we can simplify it. It's simply all I would say. It's kind of one process, so I don't understand the significance of before 15 months and after 15 months.
Okay.
Mr. Walker, what did you suggest? Can't find it.
Well, I didn't make any recommendations specifically, but in that memo, the subject line of that memo says follow-up information from 220. Yeah. So I provided just a summary of what I saw the other cities doing in Lee Summit. The mayor's office is, if there's a vacancy there, the mayor pro tem steps in as the mayor until the next regular municipal election. And at that point in time, there's an election to fill it, as would be the case. With the council, if there's a vacancy, they vote to appoint somebody until the next municipal election. Blue Springs is much the same. The mayor pro tem steps in. There's election at the regular time. Same with the council there. Kansas City looked more like Independence, where there's all these wackadoodle dates, sorry to be so blunt, and you're doing calculus to figure out how far out you are from the next election and whether that's a special election or whether the council's appointing somebody. The model charter recommended doing what we're seeing in the Blue Springs Lee Summit, filling it with either the mayor pro tem in the case of the mayor or the council appointing somebody until that next election date comes up.
Isn't that pretty much parliamentary? Like if there's a vacancy, like parliamentary for a body of government. Senators, for instance, that come up in a state, the governor appoints for until next go around. They wouldn't hold an election. Yeah, so it would be the council would appoint until. So that's standard parliamentary in that situation. Is that right?
That's my understanding about what is happening at the state level as well.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to maybe adopt the language in the Lee Summit or the Blue Springs charters? They're pretty similar.
I think the language of those two charters is much cleaner than the model charter, because the model charter is very similar to ours. We were having to do quite a bit of math, so it does seem like Blue Springs and Lee Summits is much easier to interpret than what we currently have or what the model is even suggesting.
I agree.
Would
I do.
someone else interpret, though, the Blue Springs council member? It looks to me like the mayor appoints and is approved by the council as opposed to the council, which is Lee Summit, so I'd probably tend towards Lee Summit myself.
Yeah, thank you for catching that. So yes, in Lee Summit it is a vote of the council as a body. In Blue Springs, it's reflecting probably what you're all familiar with, like a Supreme Court nomination, where the mayor is putting somebody forward, and then the body has to vote on. But they only have the power to vote yes or no, not to say, well, we as a group think it should be John Smith.
Lindsay, could you go back to the Lee Summit just one time again?
Another good reason to make this change, in my opinion, is this length of time that potentially we don't have a council member sitting. And we've experienced that. So it makes a lot more sense to fill this relatively quickly.
Okay. Any more discussion? Do we want to?
I just, for clarification, are we saying that we want the mayor to appoint someone and then it's confirmed by the council?
Not the council.
Excuse me?
At least on the council, fix it.
Yeah, that's one I was, yeah, I like the council.
Okay.
Thanks.
So is the recommendation to, let me find our code section.
I couldn't hear what some folks were talking about. Are we talking about adopting the Lee Summit version?
Yes.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay, so would the motion be it's our section 2.8, which is entitled Council Members Vacancies, but doesn't it also cover mayor?
Yep.
It does.
So does that title need to be changed also? Maybe just vacancies?
Well, I think it should say vacancy for mayor or city council. I think the way the heading should be.
Okay.
I believe the charter previously calls the council members. Council, all members, including mayor and council. It's the same thing.
That's
It's
true.
covered.
That's true. It's just the heading is a little
Yeah,
trying to find how to replace a mayor. You wouldn't easily find it.
right. That's for clarification. It's probably best to add that.
Yeah, but you're right. The mayor is considered a council member. So Lindsay, let's strike all of 2.8. And
Can I bring up something before we?
yes,
So just for discussion purposes, right now I'm not recommending one or the other, but I can see the Blue Springs method of a mayor making a recommendation as being much more efficient. The council, of course, has to make the approval. They'll have to go through the process, the vetting and all. I can see at least Summit where you've got 7 people potentially making recommendations being really cumbersome. That may be difficult.
I was thinking that too. I liked the shorter version, but you would have 7 people with ideas rather than we don't want any issues coming up really to have any vacancies. We like for them to fulfill their full terms. However, you would have 7 people possibly with an idea rather than 1 and then agree to it to fulfill just, that term. I think that's a good point because all 7 people would have You might not get it filled before the end of the election.
Yeah.
The end of the term, I should say. I think that's a very good point, because the council still has to approve it.
Right.
You just wouldn't have 7 people fighting for a friend or a certain person. Does that make sense? I think it is a good point.
I understand the issue of efficiency, but at the same time, our form of government is the manager and the council. It's not a mayor, manager or mayor council type structure. And for us to be in alignment with it, I think we need to hear the 7 voices rather than just one voice saying this is what we should do or this is who I would nominate, and then you guys decide. It may not be as efficient, but I think it's in alignment with the
Good point.
structure.
Right.
I also think if the mayor were to bring one person that wasn't approved, then you're another 2 weeks out, then it's strike 2, then strike 3, then strike 4. So it could be 6 meetings out before you decide on the 7th one, where if the council is coming together and discussing their candidates, I feel like that discussion can happen in 1 or 2 meetings and they vote. So I think it could be a little bit more efficient of a process than just relying on the mayor to present one candidate at a time to vote on and agree or disagree.
I agree with you on the efficiency. There's also in the model city charter, it does speak to a timeline.
Okay.
If they don't agree, they only get so much. It looks like maybe 30 days following the occurrence of the vacancy. So if you wanted to, put their feet to the flame, so to speak, you could adopt some of that language into what Lee Summit has done.
Okay.
Is there any more discussion on that? I would point out that the model charter, that if they, that section where if they don't name someone or vote someone in, then it goes to a election of the citizens, which would put it out even more. So I don't know if we want to add that language, just something to think about.
I think that's a big expense that we could just do away with. We've already talked about not doing the primaries and stuff in some of the notes I read. So if we add that in, now we just added that expense in and that time delay.
Okay, does someone want to make a motion? I think the consensus at this point is I'm hearing 2 different points of view, but if someone would make a motion to adopt the language in the Lee Summit or the Blue Springs Charter.
I would like to make a motion to adopt the language that Lee Summit is using in their charter.
I second that motion.
Okay, should we take a roll call?
Sure. Summer,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Casey,
Yes.
Huff,
Yes.
Lathrop,
Yes.
Allender,
Yes.
DeHart,
Yes.
Frakes,
Yes.
Waters,
Yes.
Steele,
Yes.
Boatright.
Yes.
Yes. That we'll need to make a little modification because I think they've got a section number in their language. So we'll have to look at that.
Do you want to do that right now, or?
No, I mean, let me. Got it. Well,
So that probably should qualify back to 2.2 as what we have in our charter now.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for providing that. Let me look at it. Yes, you're right. Yeah, if we could change that to 2.2.
And are we changing the title to mayor and council members, vacancies?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
What number is it in the lease and charter? Okay.
Do what, Lindsay?
You mean you just want to copy and paste it?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
It is. It's, everyone over there, we don't know.
Well, it's, you're talking about the language?
Yes, sir.
Page 3 from
Oh,
from Zach Walker's recommendations from February 17th.
there you go, you got that.
Just grab this. This
Yeah,
is what you can do.
And then you're gonna change the section to 2.2.
Two, right.
And you're gonna change the title and we're done.
No, the section within the language.
Right.
Yeah, it was done with the bottom 3.2.
In the second paragraph, you text you cut and pasted, there's a section 3.2, parentheses B.
Third
See
line,
it?
yes.
Change it to 2.2.
And
Gotcha.
you're gonna be,
Now, are we gonna change the title of this section? It says council members.
Yes, mayor and council
Well,
members.
would you have to change the one right above it too? Because it talks about mayor and council there too.
That's a good point.
So for consistency, we need to do it one way or the other.
Didn't we decide mayor is a council member?
I thought so. There was talk about changing it, so we just need to make sure it's consistent.
We talked about both ways.
Yeah, that's what, I agree there.
Do we want to add mayor to that or just leave it?
Leave it, just leave it. Leave it.
Okay,
I don't think it makes any difference.
okay.
But then the next section we say mayor and council members. Right,
apparently it mattered at one point. We got money.
right.
Okay, are you ready to move on?
Yes.
Next section is 2.9.
Change the heading.
That's fine.
Does anyone have any recommendations on 2.9? I don't.
Make a motion to leave 2.9 just like it is.
Did we want to change the heading of it though, just
Heading.
be consistent with the other two?
Yeah.
forward? Okay.
So what did you just do? Did you change the heading of 2.9?
I did, for it to just say council members instead of
Well-
mayor.
Are their compensation the same?
Process is the same.
We were trying to make it look consistent with the other two that was above it.
Now, read it, it looks like it's the same process for both.
Mr. City Manager, are the compensation the same for a city council and the mayor?
They are not.
That's why that needs to be left to mayor and council, I believe, for that section, for compensation. So leave 2.9 alone in its entirety?
I think so.
I'll make a motion to leave 2.9 stand alone as it's written.
Title and everything.
Yeah, we don't have to vote on that.
Okay, all right.
Move on.
Well, let's do.
Makes it look like.
Yeah. So we are doing the 2.10 council powers. I think this is way too long and maybe not necessary, and I'd like to hear from other members on that.
I really don't have a problem the way it is.
Well, my suggestion is that we use the language that's in the model charter, which is just one paragraph. And it says all powers of the city shall be vested in the city council, except as otherwise provided by law or this charter. And the council shall provide for the exercise thereof and for the performance of all duties and obligations imposed on the city by law. And then I think if we shorten it to that, and we would make a recommendation to the council, when we go to the council as a body, that anything, the remainder of this section could be put either into the code of ordinances, rules of procedure, or policies.
Madam Chairwoman, I tend to agree with that, because my position would be that we give the council and the city manager as much authority to run the city as it needs to, and not be locked down by a charter requirement. Within the restrictions you just added about the state statutes.
Any other discussion on that?
Which page is the model city language?
Okay, let's see. It's on page 13, 2.01.
Thank you.
I agree. I think this document is way too detailed for what a charter should represent. And if we have it listed in the ordinances, we'd be fine.
Yeah, we don't want to lose that detail. It could go somewhere else. I think this paragraph here says pretty much what we want to say.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, we would be recommending that the council move this language to the code or some other regulation of the city. I have a motion on that?
I'd make a motion to approve the
The model city.
model city language.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Wait, have more discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Discussion?
Yes, thank you. I just basically from a procedural kind of perspective, so there's a lot of things on here that it looks like the council does every year, and some of it based on the charter. Would the council then need to go back and decide and take, I mean, some of these things are obvious, but some maybe aren't. The city council then is going to be, they'll have the authority then to do or not do some of the items on this list.
Recall that we have and I don't mean this to sound patronizing, we've got the federal constitution and all powers not specifically enumerated flow to the states. And in the state constitutions, all powers not enumerated flow to the local government. So they know kind of where those fence lines are, what they can and can't do. If there were certain things that they want to make certain a council does, that could be listed in their council rules of procedure. But councils are obviously a continuing body, and best practice is to not bind future councils. So if the more latitude that they have, the better, because that needs and wants and desires evolve over time, and that gives them the ability to adapt to the expectations of the community year to year and over time.
And it's still 7 people.
Sure. And I understand that entire process, but for example, if you were to look at Section 9, to appoint or elect or without cause remove members of personnel board, planning, let me see, that's not really what I was looking for. Yeah, that's not what I was looking for at all. But the reason I asked the question, I just wanted to make sure we weren't throwing a lot of responsibility back to the council, who then is going to have a heavier annual workload because they don't have this model. But you're saying that we really do already have a model.
You've got a model, and one of the things that I think is important that caught my eye in the model charter is that if somebody wanted to challenge the council's authority on a legal challenge to it, there could be a risk that a judge out there would say, well, your charter says you can only do these things.
Okay.
And if somebody challenged it and said, well, they, declared the sky blue, something absurd. Right. Then a judge may be able to say, well, that was not in your charter of what your sphere of influence was. So I think the risk is greater of that than there being too much onus or burden put on the council to what your point was, Tom.
Okay. I've regained my train of thought about that tonight. So, for example, this charter directs the city council to appoint or elect or remove members of the personnel board, city planning commission, et cetera, et cetera. Will they not have the charter to look back to now and have that direction? So if there's an issue with someone on the planning commission, the city council says, we have no direction on what we can do here because we just took it out of the charter. Or you're saying that framework is because of state law?
So I'm going to ask Mitch to correct me because I'm kind of wading into legal territory here. But my understanding is that because the charter requires the council to appoint people to those boards, commissions, etc., that it also empowers them with the ability to remove as well. But
we're talking.
I'm I am officially out of my area of expertise now, and I will defer to Mitchell.
But we may be voting to strike that out, so I'm just crossing all the T's here.
Yeah.
So your concern is that if it's not specified in this section, that they're not going to be able to, for example, appoint or remove individuals?
As one example, yes.
The way the model city charter reads, and Zach was very correct about this, is that it's extremely broad, and it's going to allow them to do just about anything that state law, federal law allows them to do. The model city section regarding this, from what I have just read, is what it's going to do is create a lot of extra work for the city attorney, because there's going to be interpretations quite often. Can we do this? Yeah, you can, or no, you can't.
Okay.
But in general, you're going to give the city council the power to do everything that they've got here, plus anything allowed by state, federal, local law. So they're going to have their limitations. But I don't know how much of an opinion I'm allowed in terms of my personal take on these discussions, but I think it's good to give the proper authority to the people that you've elected to make the right decisions. And I say that because in my capacity at the city as the city prosecutor, I don't like limitations placed on me by the state or by the feds. I like to have my discretion. And I think this model city, if we adopt the language there instead of what's in the current city charter, I think it gives the elected officials that kind of broad ability to do what they're supposed to do, which is make decisions without the limitations of the charter. And there are going to be limitations. There's state, federal, local laws. They're going to have limitations.
Chairman, my position would be, not only does this give the freedom to our elected officials and city manager to make decisions, but also it gives the citizens the opportunity to see the accountability of exactly who's making that decision and who should be held accountable for that decision. Right now, they have the opportunity to, well, the charter says this, and I'm not allowed to do that. This opens it up so that there's nothing in between the decision maker and the results. So I think it's a great move.
Is there any other discussion? Do we have a motion in a second?
Yeah.
Okay. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Lindsay, did you get that? We're gonna strike that and replace it with the one paragraph from the model charter.
Yes, I'm gonna do that right now. So all of 210, we'll just go some of that one.
Yes.
Okay.
And this would go, we need to do kind of a report or memo to the city council that, we want to make sure they know that our discussion was that they should look at putting this into their code, rules of procedure, policies. Okay, are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay, so 211, city management analyst. Mr. Walker, could you refresh us on your recommendations for this section?
Yes. So the charter creates this position of city management analyst, and I'm paraphrasing here, but speaks to the continuous investigation, analysis of city operations, really looking for opportunities to better those or ensure that those operations are performing in the way that the council intended them to. That is not an uncommon position to have in cities of our size. However, the term city management analyst has a kind of specific connotation in city government. It's often looked at as an entry level position in a city manager's office. So somebody who maybe has just finished a Master of Public Administration degree is looking to get into a career in city management, hires into that entry level position to do special projects, research, etc. for a city manager. Most cities that have this kind of position refer to this as city auditor. I will tell you, when a decade ago this position was advertised, it caught my eye because I thought, here's an opportunity to work in a manager's office. And then you read it and think, holy cow, that's the snitch position for the city. So I think in order to, over the last several years, the council has had an extremely difficult time filling this position. I know positions everywhere are hard to fill right now, but I suspect part of the challenge is people who have an auditing background and auditing career or passion are not seeing this. They're looking for keyword terms like auditor, city auditor, etc. And then people who are looking to get into a career in a manager's office are seeing it and realizing it's not for them. So I would recommend a title change here, keeping the language the same as to what you want the position, the function it's to perform, that it reports to the council, etc. But I would recommend changing it to city auditor. The second, along those lines, there are some pretty specific qualifications listed in here. That is better placed in a job description through human resources. Doesn't mean the council can't amend it from time to time, but it provides some pretty strict specifications about what that position needs to qualify for hire.
Like a solicitor general kind of.
Correct.
Not really on anybody's side, just making sure things are going right.
Yeah, this is to be a neutral third-party position that is reporting directly to the mayor and council to provide them independent analysis and feedback about any topic related to the city government.
Are you, your suggestion included renaming it, but also eliminating the position requirements from the city charter?
Right. So that, and there where we talked about, must have a CPA or those kind of things, I would cut that language out of here, and it kind of what you were saying a minute ago, give the council that authority to write a job description. That is where they can say what kind of educational background they want, how many years of experience, those kinds of issues. Whereas, in the charter here, again, as time evolves, those needs may be different of what that position requires. It's easier to amend it in a job description than it is to have a citywide vote to amend the charter and change a job description.
Okay. Thanks.
Zach, I was really pleased to see your suggestion on this, because I can tell you personally that I was really confused with that position. I didn't know what it meant, what it entailed, who that person reported to, and you're right, it did seem like an intern type of a job. Clearly, it's much more important than that. So I'm glad for your recommendation. I think a change is necessary. There must be another better title. Auditor speaks directly to financial, to me.
So I learned a lot becoming city management analyst. There are two different type of auditors, and they have, I'm not kidding you, 2 different color books that govern what they do. There's a yellow book and a red book. This is a yellow book auditor. This is performance audits, issue-specific audits, not necessarily delving into the red book auditors, which are the CPAs, the financial auditors, etc.
What do our neighboring cities call this position? Any idea?
I know I'm most familiar with Kansas City, which has a city auditor, has the office of the city auditor, and then employs people down below that. Probably for most of you, the most easily recognizable comparison would be the state auditor. Obviously, that's an elected position, but that is an office and a position that's primarily looking at performance-related issues in and across the state of Missouri.
Well, is this something that we want the city manager to take a stab at restructuring this, and we look at it maybe in our next meeting?
I was just thinking that myself.
I could tell, that.
But I might say, sitting here looking at it, I'm not sure that city management analyst might be a little more attractive with its description changed once they read.
But I think like he said earlier, they're looking for an auditor's job, and when they look up auditor, this wouldn't pop up. And you're not going to get, this one doesn't really talk about any kind of experience either.
Right.
When you talk about job performance, and to me, that's got to be part of it. The whole thing about, it's going to be elected by 4 members of the council. They're going to be a city employee. It reports up, through the city manager's office. That whole thing, to me, just needs to be reworked.
Right, I understand that, but I think that the title describes exactly what the job is. And that's all I have about that. City management analyst. Auditor would remind people, CPA. And management analyst,
So the italics paragraph there, share with me what,
Down here?
yeah, because that one says city management auditor. Has this already occurred in 1985?
So, Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong, but prior to that language, that italicized language is what was replaced. Is that correct? Yeah. So that language is stricken from the
So
charter.
we're flipping back.
Right.
And the reason for the change, we don't know.
No, not certain.
But we just know it's ineffective at this point in time.
It has been really difficult to recruit a city management analyst. I think the last time the council had to go out 3 different times before they even got applications.
So, Mr. Walker, is this a position that you think needs to be in the charter?
So I've only had the privilege of working and living in the city for a decade, but my recommendation would be yes, based on our community's culture and our history, etc. I think having the assurance that there is an independent party who is showing up to work every day at the direction of the council, who is of course elected by and representative of the people, that person is able to work without interference from anyone on city staff to evaluate, recommend ways that things could function better. The other thing that's in city code that the management analyst is required to perform is a review of any contract that is over $2 million or that will be in excess of $500,000 and in effect for longer than a year. So again, that would provide assurances to the council and the community that a fair, accurate, unbiased bid procurement process occurred. So I think with a community of our size and again, our culture, our history, et cetera, I think this position provides that assurance that somebody's keeping an eye on things.
I guess my point would be, you have an organizational chart, right?
Correct.
Why wouldn't that just be a part of an organizational chart for the city rather than it being in city charter? I mean, the council doesn't have a word about, and maybe they do, about all the positions you have on that organizational chart, right?
The council's saying that comes in, we have to get approval to amend what's called the table of organization. So which it doesn't create the number, but it creates by name the positions in the city. So, it creates the position of police officer, the position of firefighter, the position of city engineer, things that aren't envisioned and listed in here because over time those needs have evolved. I think what the charter intent here was to say we are required to have that position as a city, and it is to be independent of the rest of the civil service reporting directly to the council, to be that independent eyes and ears. Now, that's certainly not opinion on that. That's just background of my understanding of it.
Well, I guess my position would be that what we just did would open the door for you to be able to, that council to make that decision.
Sure.
So I tend to agree.
And I will, so here's, to your point, I will tell you, a few years ago, when, again, we had a lot of difficulty filling this position. What was discussed was hiring a independent audit firm on contract. So maybe, we're going to allocate X amount of dollars and intend to have 4 audits performed a year. If you look, there is language in there that says something about shall be an officer of the city. And down below shall be a full-time employee. We were hamstrung. It's like, nope, that idea is done. We can't recommend. And the council was on board. They're like, yeah, we can't hire this position. It's rather than just, kicking our feet against the wall, let's go hire some firm to do this so it's getting done. And that was ruled unable to do that because of that language.
If we changed it to city auditor, would we be able to add some language that would give the council the ability to outsource it?
I think you can, and I would be happy to look at it. And I will tell you, I'm doing a very cursory, fast review over here, and I'm not seeing anything specific in the charter of the other 2 cities we were going back to, Lee Summit and Blue Springs. So I could look at Kansas City and see how they're calling for it, but I think you're on the right track of providing latitude, that it's saying it's more important that this function be performed than specifying how it's getting done.
Well, this is in the article for the council, and it sounds like it's an employee of the council because 4 members vote. If you took that out from under them, then it could be on the org chart you talked about, just in his organization, and it wouldn't have to be in the charter. But because it's talking about dealing with the council and then voting, I think that's why it's in here.
Would it be feasible to look at the cost of an outside audit firm versus a full-time employee? And I'm just saying, nowadays, if you're looking at an audit firm, you're way in a budget. You're deep into some finances to have, I would call them, Mr. City Manager, periodical audits, because the firm would be contracted, correct? And so that would be one of my issues to look at, would be the cost of an outside firm versus an independent city employee.
I don't think, by looking at it, either to eliminate it or not, what we've done this evening opens the door for the city council to basically.
To make the move even if it's not in the charter.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it does open their powers. What we did just do is that's a very valid point.
It just doesn't need to have a title.
And I will, again, cursory review, but here's the long and short of the Kansas City language. The mayor and council shall appoint a city auditor to serve at their pleasure. Period.
I don't even know if that needs to be in the charter.
Because they're appointing it. If it wasn't their appointment and he could just do what he needed to do, then you wouldn't need to have it in here.
So the city has an annual audit, correct?
Yes, independent financial audit. Yes, ma'am.
Financial audit.
Correct.
And so this position would be, like you were talking about, the different type of audit.
Yeah, this one is more about, think about process, procedures, departments, how are different services being delivered? Is there a more efficient way to do it?
And is that a full-time job?
Probably more than a full-time job.
Well, I mean, when I did it, of course it was.
Of course.
Of course.
Need 3 people.
Yeah. Honestly, there's a lot of downtime where you are waiting for departments to respond back. You're at the mercy of the council and how much work they've provided you as well. But even still, you can work as hard as you can and still be at the mercy of waiting for a department to provide you a report, give you a document, whatever it might be. And no matter how many times you call or email, you're still waiting for that to come back. So the work comes in fits and spurts, and there are downtime. There are periods of waiting.
I feel like we would be a little unwise to rush past the words that our city manager's already given us, and that is that this position is neutral. This position does work, I think, in between these other positions of responsibility within the city, and that's valuable. I think we keep it in the charter, but we bring it forward to be more relevant.
Do you have an opinion if the 1985 de-italicized that she brought up earlier, is that more effective in attracting an auditor? It outlines a lot of the same responsibilities, but does take away some of those HR job posting qualifications. Did they do it better than what we have now 25 years ago?
Give me just a second to call that up here if you don't mind. I think that title is more reflective of the type of candidate the council's going to be looking for. My thought on that is where it talks about that being a full-time employee of the city. That is probably something this group should deliberate. It could be handled either way. Again, because of the fits and starts waiting period associated with that position, I think there are times when the city might be better served by having a firm on contract than having a full-time employee who's drawing an hourly salary, getting paid health insurance, getting paid benefits, earning a pension that's going to create a long-term financial obligation for the city. I think the council should have the latitude to decide how best to perform the function, not necessarily specify the delivery. But that is something you all would want to deliberate a little bit.
I think if you truly want a third-party reviewer, it would be easier to keep it at that arm's distance of contractor versus employee because of what you just outlined. Most evaluations and reviewers are third-party, i.e. contracted. So I think at the will or whatever that short, brief statement was pretty nice.
I don't mean to monopolize your meeting. This happens to all of us in our jobs where you've been there a while and things just start to seem normal. You just live with certain things. We are required to turn over our independent financial auditor every 3 years because of that. You want fresh eyes coming in, looking for the weaknesses, the breaks, the things that need to be fixed. That, again, may be something associated with this position where having new eyes with new ideas, who's looked at other cities or other private sector businesses can bring a different perspective than somebody who's been in that position 5, 7, 10 years.
With this, the way we're envisioning this position, would it be covered under 2.13?
That's a thought. Jackie, that's a thought, yes.
Yeah, it says it pretty clear, full-time, part-time, or contract basis.
There's another section. I wanted to verify this because this is in the model charter. We're going to come up on a section here in a little bit, 2.26, that requires an independent annual audit. That's referenced in the model charter as a best practice. That is another alternative thought that this group could consider, is, again, stating that the council have we could workshop language here, but again, speaking to some sort of function of having a ongoing review of city services, city programs, policies, etc., but leave open to the council via that 2.13 you were referencing, Jackie, to figure out how best to deliver that requirement. A thought.
Yeah, that was originally when I was reviewing the charter. That was my first thought, is that part of this should be in the annual audit.
And Jackie, the more you read, the more you learn, I guess. 2.27 actually requires that there be an annual evaluation of city functions and services and facets of city administration.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The way I read this and the gist of what I get from listening to you, this is sort of like an internal auditor.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
And I have a brother that's a CPA, and that's exactly what he does for Yellow Freight. And the question I have is, I would think that this position is very important to the city council because they can obtain information from a quasi-independent source about various topics in various departments. My brother does that sort of work. He looks for efficiencies. He looks at different things as required by the CEO of the corporation, or maybe the board of directors. And so I would think that, well, I don't know, but I would think that the function of this employee would be very important to the city council.
The function absolutely has been, Mr. Allender. The challenge, and again, the city's older than 10 years, but that's my frame of reference, it has been difficult to keep somebody in that position long term. But having somebody to provide that service to the council has been helpful to them, as you're referencing. It has functioned exactly like what you're referencing with your brother, and provides that value to the council.
Well, it would seem to me then that the answer to this dilemma would be to give the council some flexibility in obtaining outside assistance if they can't find a suitable employee to do the work.
And again, that was the road we were going down. Time runs together 2 or 3 years ago, and this will come as a shock to nobody. Councilmember DeLucy found that language right there and said, we can't do that because the charter says it has to be a full-time employee. All 7 were on board with the idea of an outside contractor, but she found the language that said, nope, can't do it.
Well, I guess that's where I'm going. I don't have any specific language to give you, but can't we amend the language of the city charter, giving the city council the flexibility to obtain outside help if they need it?
Yeah, I was saying, I think they have that in 2.13.
I'm gonna jump in real quick and see if I can be excused at 6:45. I have to go to Jefferson City for a hearing tomorrow, so I can cut out of here early. Nonetheless important, I have to do one more thing, and I'll see you all in 2 weeks.
All right, thank you.
I make a motion, yeah.
Well, I love what you said about Karen DeLucy and her opinion about 2.11, and I agree what Jackie says about 2.13. I've read them both. I agree with what Jackie said about 2.13, but if there's any issue about 2.11, then we could certainly add some language there so there's no mystery about what the intent of the charter is.
I think there's a little bit of overlap because we talked about 226. That talks about some financial audit. We're talking about this management audit or whatever.
And then check out 2.27 that says you've got to have at least annually an evaluation.
Exactly. So there's a lot of conflict in here, a lot of overlap. So I think we need to do some realignment.
And just so I
Mr.
get,
Walker, is there an annual evaluation by the council?
So what's occurring is not the annual evaluation, but annually the Audit and Finance Committee is assigning the management analyst somewhere between 3 and 5 audits each year to complete. But there is not a written report that's like a State of the Union that's referencing, I've looked at all these departments and everybody's behaving and all of that. It's more of a here's my report that you assigned me on fleet maintenance. Here's my report you assigned me on overtime in a department. It's not citywide. It's very specifically requested and tailored by that Audit and Finance Committee of the council.
Another reason, I think, a couple reasons to go open to this language up so it's not an employee is it gets it out at HR issues, which are significant in any time, but certainly is going to continue to be significant. Secondly, it opens you up to get a qualified, certified, even Malcolm Baldridge or whatever it is you're wanting as far as performance evaluation as well. So yeah, I feel like you're going to get a more valued report and assessment if you can open up the language to allow for a non-employee. Maybe an employee's better, it could be, but I think the council needs to have that opportunity and that option. If there's a way we can get all of this well written and understood so that we don't have hopscotch, got an evaluation here, we have fiscal here, we have operational here, that would be fantastic. Who do we go to get that assistance? Because we've batted it around. I think we're all to that point, maybe. Who can help us with that language?
I would be happy to work with the city attorney's office and kind of, like you said, take away the hopscotch and figure out how to consolidate this all in one place. I think bifurcating the difference between an independent financial audit and then this concept of somebody who can take care of a performance related audit or audits is important. But I think there's a great efficiency to be had to collapse all of that and locate it in the same area of the charter together.
I agree. So do we want to just come back to these and let the city staff work on it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. My first kind of reaction was that I felt like we're potentially taking away a tool for the city council, but it sounds like maybe we're giving them more tools at the end of the day. Giving them more tools. And really, if the city council has questions about efficiencies or direction, that they also have a city manager and his staff that is tasked with those items. So, makes sense to me.
Okay. So for 211, we'll kind of include 2.27, maybe 2.26, 2.13. We'll come back to those. At our next meeting, would you be able to have it by then, or do we need to put it out further?
No, I think we could definitely have something for your consideration. And as with the last, I can get that through Lindsay emailed to the group in advance so you can read it and consider it.
That would be great. Thank you. Well, it's 6:45. I don't know. Do we want to go further or stop now? Does anyone? The next section would be city clerk. We want to go into that one and then call it a night?
I have something I'd like to discuss. I'd like us to look at rules and procedures on how we're actually receiving citizen input. I don't know that we've actually discussed that. I don't know if we're at the point where we should start seeing citizen input, or should we schedule a public hearing. I think the citizen input's important, but just we got two things this time, and I don't know that some of it was not helpful at all to me. So I don't know what the group thinks we should do with the citizen input. I don't want to hold anyone back, but at the same time, I don't believe we solicited for it at this point.
Okay, well, we're not at a point right now on the agenda to go into that, but we can do that after maybe other business. If you want to stop the review of the charter now and go to other business.
I think I do.
Yes.
Okay. I agree. So when we come back, we stopped at 2.11. So we'll pick up there again at the next meeting. Good night, then. Okay. Next, other business. Do you want to restate your opinion about that?
I don't think I can.
Well, let me just say that when we had our first meeting, we discussed this, and there was this was a decision that I made along with staff, that there would not be a public comment item on our agendas. We want to be independent. It's not that we don't want to hear from the public, but we don't want to have a lot of discussion during our meetings. We've got a lot to cover. However, if citizens or anyone wants to get information to us or an opinion to us, we ask that they put it in writing and send it to our liaison, Lindsay Gallman. And if any of you get anything, like I did, I got the email from Mark Randall. I just immediately forwarded it to Lindsay, and she sent it out. So it's for our review, and if you want to discuss it, when we get to that point in the charter, we can.
So is that a rule that you're coming up with? That we just,
A rule?
yeah, we just continue to accept it and we discuss it at some later point? Is that how you want to do it? I don't know.
That was what we went over at the first meeting.
Okay.
I mean, we haven't reached the point, so these emails that we got were on the city utilities, and we haven't reached that yet. So I encourage people to come to our meetings, but I think anything in writing, any comments need to go through our liaison and then to us.
Okay. Sounds wonderful.
Is there anything else under other business anyone has? Lindsay, when is our next meeting?
March 7th.
Right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I have one quick thing. Mr. Walker brought up here's on how extensive should the review of the charter be, and were we going to address that? That was his first thing in his memo to the review commission.
I'd like to speak to that.
Go ahead.
We talked about that kind of at the end of, well, at the beginning and at the end of the last meeting. I think that we've already set the tone here. We're gonna make as many wholesale changes in this document as we want, because we're way past. If to go the other direction would be to make small, specific changes. We're past that. We're gonna change everything to try to get this document up to date and hopefully present it to the city council, in my opinion.
I share that same opinion.
Okay. Because, yeah, if we go that direction, we really need to start over.
And also to the point, I think that was the expectation put on us, right, by
Yes.
council? So we're not gonna try to sell this to somebody who's not already expecting it or is not wanting it, I would hope, right?
And that's
So
all.
their level of change, their appetite for change seems like it's now.
The only struggle is that this has to go to a vote
For this city.
to
The voters.
voters. And a big wholesale change document is going to be difficult. But I don't know any other way around it. I think we're going down the right road. I think.
Yeah, I think if we took each item, just piecemeal that, it's gonna be just as cumbersome as presenting a new document that is updated. If we only do it every 50 years, I think we better make a good stab at it.
Anything else? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
How you doing?